apparently there was a woman creeping around up there.
Written and directed by Michael Kusiak. We are talking death metal. And I've said in a few videos, once upon a time I was very much into this type of music scene. So death metal is about a group of metalheads, I guess, who are a band, and they've just come back from a disastrous European tour. They got terrible reviews. Everyone thinks they split up. No one's really interested in their music at this point. And their last chance is to record a new album. So they go to this remote farmhouse in the middle of nowhere to record a new album with a couple of their girlfriends and like a couple of producers and stuff. But one of the group, this character called Ivan, has managed to pick up a copy of the Devil's Concerto, which is an apparently cursed piece of music that, if listened to, will damn you to hell and kind of cause you to go mad and kill yourself and other people, etc. They all think that's raw metal and decide they're going to incorporate this into the music. Inevitably, satanic stuff starts to happen and our band members start to get kind of possessed and influenced by the dark side. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what works with death metal. So it's a very low budget movie and, you know, obviously quite a fun premise, and the link between heavy metal music and horror is, you know, runs kind of quite deep, and one normally goes hand in hand with the other. Normally fans of, you know, heavy metal music will be into horror movies and vice versa. Not all the time, but I think there's more often than not there is a kind of a link there to a degree. So it's kind of a perfect pairing, and we have seen a variety of kind of horror, heavy metal music kind of crossovers in the past. This is but one. But what does work in this movie's favour? I think having this kind of like band be our kind of protagonists, and they're out in the middle of nowhere dealing with these kind of satanic forces of which they kind of like to, you know, incorporate into their show and things like that, but really just for kind of an act more than anything. Now they're having to kind of deal with the real thing. You know, it's for an interesting kind of premise for a movie. And we have our kind of our cast of characters, and they're all quite different, to be honest. And obviously when they're on stage, they're all in their kind of like, you know, makeup and stuff like that, and you know, giving it the old devil horns and all this. But in reality, obviously, we see the sort of the real people behind that, and you know, most of them are relatively kind of well-adjusted sort of people and stuff. So I kind of like that look at the kind of the sort of heavy metal culture. And obviously, once being kind of part of it, I still listen to it, but I don't really follow it anymore. But you know, it's, you know, people have that kind of opinion of you, if that makes sense. So it is kind of obviously good to see a movie that sort of, you know, humanises these type of individuals. But that's not to say, obviously, that this movie doesn't kind of go full force into actually leaning into all this kind of demonic imagery. When our characters start to become influenced by it, they, you know, they're each kind of influenced in a sort of a different way, a particularly sort of gory and gruesome way, with some kind of fun, kind of practical VFX. Again, it's kind of low budget, but I have to say I quite like some of the sort of the fun and gooey effects that this movie, you know, that has. Now, if you don't like heavy metal music, I will say the movie isn't filled with metal music. We get a little bit at the beginning where we kind of see a concert, but really there's not much else in it. So if you are not a fan of heavy metal music, I don't feel this film is like too overpowering with that. I mean, I like this sort of music, but even I find sometimes when filmmakers incorporate like really heavy music, you know, into horror films, it's like, oh, you know, I didn't need that in this movie. So this one, I think, you know, it introduces you to this world, and we're going to see a gig at the beginning of the movie, but then really it's more about sort of you know, spooky ambience for the rest of the movie, and occasionally we'll hear like this rendition of the Devil's Concerto, which is all sorts of like, you know, freaky sounding, but that kind of works in regards to this sort of movie. So, you know, I think it's more accessible than you might think if you're not interested in that sort of heavy metal scene. And if you are, obviously, you would appreciate some of the kind of the little Easter eggs and stuff like that. I think this movie sort of folds in there, and you know the kind of life behind that, you know, the music and all of that. I think is fun. So I do think it actually does a job here of you know, serving both crowds, so to speak. I think the acting is pretty good. I think everyone here does a decent enough job. This isn't going to be sort of Oscar worthy or anything like that, but I think you believe the characters in their roles here. It's pretty much all you can ask for in a kind of a sort of a B-movie sort of horror and things like that. And you know, the film has this sort of growing sense of sort of dread in the movie where, you know, at first, you know, people all think it's, you know, fun and games, but as the sort of realisation starts to sink in that they're in trouble and what are they going to do, and these forces seem to be growing in number and strength, you know, there's some sort of more kind of creepy moments and stuff, and we get a couple of, albeit low budget sort of scares and stuff like that. So what doesn't work in this movie, here's my big issue with this film, and that is the post-production of this film. The post-production of this movie has, in my opinion, not that I've seen a cut before this, but there's some horrible decisions that have been made post-production. Let me give you some. So there is way too much slow-mo in this movie. I mean, this is not like it's an action-packed movie where you've got to slow down the camera. This is no Michael Bay here. There's no big explosions and things like that where we want to get a good look of everything. But there's just so much slow-mo in this movie, and it's just irritating. But that's not all, people. That's not all. This does lots of kind of digital snap zooms. And what do I mean like that? So like a snap zoom is where you have a quick sort of zoom in, but they haven't used, what they've done is they've just like enlarged part of the picture. So when you see these like zooms, it's all grainy because they haven't actually like used an optical lens to do a zoom. They've just enlarged part of the standard print. So it looks like, it looks horrible because like the kind of the zoom looks like really bad quality. I'll try and even do a bit here to sort of try and demonstrate what I mean, and just kind of like enlarging part of the pre-existing film. It doesn't look good. There's some horrible editing in this movie. There's lots of kind of like quick cuts and things like that. And I think sometimes it's meant to be like to show you, you know, disorientation and stuff, and I get that, but you know, again, it's just sort of at times it just seems like it doesn't serve the story. It appears that there's like sometimes the audio sounds a little bit fake. I mean, what I mean by that, it sounds like it's been sort of ADR'd. It doesn't really sort of sound natural. So I think this movie has been modified, you know, post-shooting and it's post-production, and to me it just seems like it's made a hash of the film, to be honest, because I think it looks kind of pretty awful in that regards. So I really didn't like this kind of After Effects feeling from this movie. What can we say other than that? I don't know if this movie really sort of, because it's called death metal, even though I do think the upswing, as I say, I think you could arguably say this movie is more accessible to those of non-heavy metal fandom. Maybe the people who watch this will be of heavy metal fandom, and I don't think it really sort of leans into that as much as I think it would have benefited from. Having a movie really more integrated with the kind of the sort of metal music and maybe you know, characters who are involved in it a little more and stuff like that. It just seems that, I mean, after the sort of the initial sort of gig sequence, it might as well not be you know, about heavy metal. It could just be about anything, to be honest with you. It's about people kind of getting influenced and possessed by demonic forces. Really has outside of the beginning. Very little to do with the actual kind of music scene, and I think that it could have lent into that more, to be honest, and could have really honed in on a sort of an audience there, because I don't think it really does. It doesn't take advantage of it. The kind of the effects are you know, are quite enjoyable, but they are low budget. I mean, there's no getting around it. Some of them are fun, but they kind of look a little on the hokey side. Maybe the pacing's a little slow for some, and again, you had more sort of hardcore elements in this. I think it might have been this might have solved this problem, but maybe it's a little bit slow, to be honest. And even though I think the acting is fine, I think some of the way these characters are written, certainly in regards to how they are dealing with the supernatural stuff, it can't decide whether it wants to be sort of taking it seriously or hokey in a way. And the movie sort of doesn't quite know where to fall in regards to its sort of tonal elements here, which I found it needed to kind of pick a lane, really, because I feel we want to have a slight comedic edge, but we also, there's no jokes really here. It's just that people taking it sort of seriously, but at the same time there's a little bit of a kind of a tongue-in-cheek to a degree, but it never really feels like commits to either sort of camp to me. And ultimately, it's pretty much a standard, you know, demonic forces possession style film, really, outside of the bells and whistles of being wrapped up in heavy metal. I don't think it's anything special in regards to sort of story elements here. So, you know, there you go. It's a little bit of a disappointment. Not a bad film necessarily, but I do think it didn't capitalise on some of the sort of the opportunities that it had. But my God, this post-production of this movie this is the one time I think I've ever really said this in a back review where I think it's possibly made this movie quite a lot worse. I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.